All right, welcome back, Generals and Admirals. This is General Johnny. Today we're going to talk about Broken Arrow, and specifically, we're going to look at the Armor Airborne deck. So, if you are a beginner, or really, this is going to be a beginner to intermediate level um, deck for at least USA. So, there's multiple things that we can get into about here, and we'll also show kind of the capabilities in real time on how this is ideally used. But just starting out with the recon tab. So just looking at this deck, all right, the recon tab has pretty decent, I want to say, things. So when you're looking at recon tab, you really want to have a few UAS. So you got the Global Hawk, which is really good, has a pretty good range on it. 5500 is pretty good. It also has decent speed for a UAS. Okay, I mean, all UAS are going to be pretty slow in general, but this has a decent speed. So combine that with its extended range, Global Hawk's going to be pretty useful. A lot of time these get shot down, but if you're seating correctly, or if you're baiting correctly, and you really seed their forces, this is going to be a very useful tool. So next thing we have is the Gray Eagle. Again, the Gray Eagle, the way I use it is, if I identify something on the outskirts of the map that just needs to be taken out, I will use the Hellfire. You can also use, stingers. I don't see a real scenario where you can use these stingers or anything, but the Hellfires are really good, again, just for dealing for those one-off. You don't want to send a jet, you don't want to send a whole helicopter or anything like that. These things can identify those sneaky BMPs on the corners, and then annihilate them, or they can just supplement your recon. Again, 4500 for that range, so not super great or anything, but it'll get the job done in a pickle. Okay, and you obviously have your airborne snipers. Okay, so they do come with the blazing case capability. I don't upgrade these at all, really. I mean, snipers, if you can get them into good locations, obviously they're going to pay dividends. But I have seen a lot of people overinvest into things like snipers. Keep in mind, they're something that's nice to have and can definitely change the outcome of the game, but not necessarily. If you're gonna use them, I would stick to two. If you're gonna use more than two, I feel like it's a waste in income. All right, so I mean, they're 85. If you get them upgraded, it can be 100 just for snipers. And yeah, well, if you know how to use them really well, they can be worth it. But two is about the limit for that, in my opinion. Cav Scouts. Okay, so here's the thing with Cav Scouts. I love Cav Scouts. I think they're actually really good, and it's funny because it's literally a three-man team. So when you fight with these guys, they're going to be pretty spongy, right? I mean, they're gonna die really quickly. They only have 15 HP, three guys, so really they're not gonna do well in that kind of scenario. But you know what? If you put them in your midline, or yeah, really your midline, don't put them up front where they're going to take a lot of damage, but put them in their midline, and this javelin does work on any enemy units that might be attacking. So something to consider with the Cav Scouts. And I try not going overboard with them. They are 85 points for that, so they can hurt your income if you have too many of them. But really, you could run 3 or 4 of these. I think they're good to run in pairs, not necessarily in the same building, but next to each other, so that they can rip off 2 javelins down like a straightaway. And they have really good sight, 1750. All right, it's pretty decent sight. And so I think the combination of the sight and the javelin is really good. Going on to the Set B2 Tua. So obviously compared to the sight of other tanks, I mean, this is 2000 compared to 1400. So you can tell that's a huge difference as far as the optics that go onto this tank, and it's still a V2, so no active protection or anything like that. However, very useful with the armor and then also with the scouting range. I would recommend honestly running two of these if you can. And then you have the LRAS Humvee, which is pretty decent if you can sneak it around, and it's pretty cheap, so you can really use it in a multitude of ways. Going on to the infantry tab, so if I wanted to adjust this, you could. I have been running less stingers, dismounted stingers. Again, 65 actually isn't too terrible. Won't mess up your economy too bad. And these guys can actually hold their own against other infantry with their loadout, especially the M249 part of this, 6 men. So pretty good deal there. I would maybe, if I was going to tweak this, bring this down a little bit, and then maybe find a way to get another Sep 2 to up here. And then we got the Airborne NGSW. Now these guys are rock stars. Honestly, I've seen people run just the normal Airborne, but I think it is worth the 15-point upgrade to get the extra rocket, and then also 600. So this is going to do a lot of damage with the NGWS, and they can hold their own in a long distance battle. Okay, and then the Javelin Weapon Squad. So it's easy to get use this and go a little bit overboard, right? So they do have two javelins. They are pretty decent on standoff because they have two of the 240 Limas. Okay, so this is a pretty decent infantry unit at long range. And I say again, at long range. Anything with a javelin is going to be pretty good against armor at long range. But as you can tell, playing Russian players, they like to get up and personal and close, and that's how they kind of win. So use this to supplement. Again, I put it in your midline, supplement at your front line. Do never put these guys in the front line, and you should be good to go. All right, so next up is the mech engineers, and this is what I call frontline infantry. So they are purely for holding buildings, and as you can see, they have some shotguns in their loadout. All right, they also have this small D, which is more of an anti-infantry sort of rocket. So they do have that at the squad level. So they do pretty decent in if they're stacked up in building to building combat, or rather close quarter combat. Building to building, they're actually pretty decent too. What they lack is really fighting any armor, really just any armor, even BMPs, IFVs, they'll get pretty eaten up, and they don't have the greatest. I mean, they have 30 hit points and 10 protection, but honestly, they're not that great against IFVs and armor. So I would stray away from, having them exposed. Put them in buildings, use them as kind of, and they're only 50 points, so use them to hold points and, be your frontline infantry, right? They're not going to do anything crazy most of the time, but they are good at holding. The Mark AGL team, I just have this as a kind of an addition. They're going to be really good if you put them in support of the rest of your infantry to eat up Russian infantry. All right, so they do come with two Mark 19s, which is pretty good. Okay, moving on to the armor tab, which is probably the most interesting part of running any armor specialization for the US. You obviously have the legendary M1A2 Sep V2. Now, I never run the V3 for the pure fact that I don't think that it's worth I think it's like 380 points when you can just get the V2, which pretty much, I mean, it has a little bit lighter armor and all that, but I mean, it will do the job of a V3 in my opinion. And I really will only call out one or two of these just because it wrecks your economy so bad if all you're doing is investing in B2s. And with the Russian cruise missile spam and the other infantry AT spam, I mean, it's really not super useful to call out a whole lot of B2s, in my opinion. Now, there are different play styles that you could definitely do that, but I stray away from it. But I do have three of them in case one goes down, and maybe I just run two. Sometimes I'll just run one. And the main battle tank, the main tank for the US that I run is the M1A2 set. Okay, so this is going to have a pretty good armor comparison. I mean, it's pretty much there as far as the armor. Yeah, the rounds, the Mike 256 120 millimeter rounds are a little bit less damage, okay, given. But for, what is that, 70 points difference, you can call out a bunch of these M1A2 SEPs, just the base type, and counter Russian armor. And in my opinion, this is the best way to go. You know, no active protection or anything like that. But if you use them smart and micro this well, this is a really efficient armor tank for the US, which not a lot of things are efficient on the US side. But you know, obviously you bring out the V2, you have the active protection, and you pair these kind of up to help each other out. All right, the support tab. The support tab is probably the most important tab in most decks, in my opinion. Some may disagree, but you're gonna have the Avengers. The Avengers are actually pretty good in this game. You can either upgrade them or not upgrade them. You have to figure out the point distribution there. I think they're good, well, not upgraded. So the good thing about this is they're very mobile. Okay, so they're 115 speed as compared to something with even the upgraded engine. It's going to be 70 speed on the M-Shorad. Now, the way I look like for this is the M-Shorad is really good, especially with the Hellfire missiles against really helicopters, right? So, and they can shoot down missiles, so that's really good for them. So the thing about it is you kind of always want to have a Stinger based system and a Shorad slash Hellfire based system, something that's going to bring the punch, right? And then something that's kind of going to overwhelm the enemy players and stuff like that on their helicopters. So I bring these in pairs and I kind of try pairing them up. The Shorad's really good against the cruise missile spam. And then obviously you have your Pack 2s. Now look, here's the thing. I generally play with Pack 2s. The way I play with those is I don't bring them out unless I need to. So I'm not going to bring them out. Maybe I'll bring one out and substitute for air attacks, right? But you bring them out at the beginning of the game and you only bring one, okay? If later in the game you notice that they aren't bringing out a whole lot of seed and they're bringing out a lot of planes, or maybe you know they're bringing out both, and you're confident in your ability to turn off radar or whatever, but you really need to counter the air and the cruise missile spams, then you bring these two out. The reason I don't bring them out immediately is because, again, 205 for something that's going to sit in the back line and really not get a whole lot of action unless you notice it, right? Then I'm not going to waste those points on the Pack 2. I'm just not. And then next, so that's pretty much your air defense, and that's kind of how I lay out these decks, because I usually use air defense, artillery. This probably should be moved up here, and then supply. All right, the Brutuses. The Brutuses are an amazing piece of artillery. I think, honestly, with the M777s, 130 cost, you can get 3 of them. Usually, you know, you can run 2 of them. I would get all 3, but that is a total of 390 points compared to something like the Iron Thunder. Okay, these are actually going to do really well against light skinned armor vehicles and then also infantry, and that's why I kind of spam these 3 Brutuses. They can move super fast, 95 speed. All right, if they get hit, yeah, they're done, but you know, also if the Iron Thunders get hit, they're done too, especially from airstrikes and cruise missiles. So I'd rather, invest 390 points as opposed to 500 or 600 points in the Iron Thunders, but that's just my preference and playstyle. All right, next I have the MTV. This is the best, in my opinion, transport in the game with the 95 speed, 16 man carrying capacity. So not only can this bring out 4,500 supplies, which is a pretty decent amount, not too large to where you're investing too much in one supply depot, but and then they can also bring out infantry. So I think this it really is the best. Other than the price 50 is kind of expensive for a transportation truck, but I think this is the best transport in the game. You can upgrade it too, but I don't think I've ever done that because if it gets in contact, it's pretty much gonna die. All right, so I brought this out as well just because I had the extra points. You could probably delete this and only bring out the MTVs. A little bit more carrying capacity, kind of slow to be honest. So this is one of those things that I might like get rid of in the future, but that's how I have the deck right now. And then the MCV with mostly smoke. This is just to smoke the target and support, infantry or armor pushes. That's pretty much what that is. I don't always bring this out. It's really situational dependent. Going to the Helo tab, all right, so the longbow, in my opinion, is one of the better helicopters, all right, with 20 armor, 15 hit points. All right, it's not going to necessarily survive anything, but it can survive a hit. 15 for the ECM, all right, and then so this is going to be my anti-tank helicopters, all right, so I got the 8 Hellfire Fire and Forget. Okay, and then I also have the guided rockets on here. If you put 2 Hellfires on it, I don't really see the purpose of it. You have a lot of rockets. You have 16 rockets. It bumps it up to 330. When you're building these decks, you want to make it economically efficient, I guess you could say. So you could bring this out, and realistically, with the 30 APKWS guided rockets, they can take out infantry, and they can really actually hurt a lot of IFEs. And stuff like that. For 255, I think it's kind of a steal, so that's what I would. And then I also have the Apaches, and for 150 is actually really good in my opinion. What is the real difference? You just have a little bit less sight range here, but I bring these out as a quick reaction to enemy infantry, and these hydro rockets will really just tear up the infantry, especially for 150 if they kill 2 infantry. And really what you want to do is you want to use this in support of your infantry and armor pushes. If they are held up in buildings, you bring this around, make sure it's at low altitude around buildings, and this will absolutely delete a lot of Russian infantry. So the Apache, great system there. Okay, and then the Kiowa Warrior, what I have on this loadout is an AT and AA. So this is my oh shit button. If I see that they're pushing with, helicopter rush, or if they also have some, IFVs, maybe a BMP push that I kind of want to counter. For 130 points is pretty good against that. So I have 2 of those, and also the spotting distance is actually pretty good, 2400 on that. The CH-47 is going to be one of those max capacity airlift helicopters. As you can see, 24 seats. Let's see if I do have an upgrade. I do have now all I have is 240 machine guns. So it goes out there. It can drop infantry at the beginning of the game, or you can have 1250 or sorry 12,500 supplies. So if you want a bigger supply depot, that's what I use that for. All right, going on to the air tab, and this is the best part of the US is the air tab. The F-15 Strike Eagle. So I arm it with clusters, and then the fuel tanks to make this a little bit cheaper. What else do we have on here? We have the AIM 9 and AIM 120. So you get kind of one of each. You can kind of take out helicopters if you really need to, if you're in a pickle, and then also protect against other fighters. No designation pod. Usually I don't do designation pod unless I have smart munitions, so there's no point in lasing for yourself unless you need it. So yeah, pretty much these 1,000-pound CBU 87 clusters are going to take out tanks. Don't use them against infantry, kind of useless in that scenario. So that's when I would bring those out, and I have 2 of those so I can cycle through if one goes down. My purely fighter is going to be the F-15 Charlie Eagle. So this is really cheap, 210. You get 2 aims and 2 120s. Really, you can kind of mess with this loadout as you want, but this is my, again, kind of an oh shit against air. You still have the AMRAMs and the Sidewinders, so you can protect against, again, planes and helicopters. And lastly, and honestly, the shining jewel of this deck, in my opinion, anything that can hold these Mavericks. So I equip it with these 6 Mavericks. In my opinion, is the best loadout. So we have the NT and the central pylons, and then we also have the AIM-2s and ECM pods. Okay, that makes it pretty cheap. I guess you could just run the ECM pods, make it 280. But with the AIM-2 and ECM pods, you can also kind of counter, and you'll see a lot of times if they have an armor formation, they might have some helicopters nearby, so this can kind of suppress that or even destroy it at the same time. But the main point is these Mavericks will go off as long as you maintain visual on the enemy. These things will do absolute work. And the downside is obviously how slow they are, 450 in comparison to something like 900 with the F-15 Charlie or the Strike Eagle that's got 810 speed. These things are pretty slow, not gonna lie, and yeah, they can get shot down, the enemy can smoke. There's a lot of counters to this, but there's also a lot of effective ways to use this as well. So I add 2 of those, cycle them in and out, and they're really good if the enemy clumps up armor formations. Those Mavericks will absolutely delete them. So that's everything I have for you on the Armor Airborne deck. Again, this is General Johnny's strategy. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, join the channel. I'll be doing plenty more of these, posting a bunch of comprehensive beginner intermediate guides for Broken Arrow, and then also discussing just general decks of what I think is useful and not useful. Again, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you next time.